The Sista Code has roots in African American community history of resilience. During times when black women were excluded from mainstream feminist movements and faced both racial and gender discrimination, they often turned to each other for strength and support. The code emerged from shared experiences in churches, salons, families, neighborhoods, and social activism. Core principles of the Sista Code include encouraging one another's growth, success, and emotional well-being, maintaining trust, being loyal, and not betraying a fellow sister, especially in matters of relationship, personal struggles, or public criticisms. Creating safe spaces where women can be vulnerable without fear of harsh judgment. Speaking up against injustice or mistreatment directed at another black woman. Honoring the unique beauty, strengths, cultural identity of African American women. Passing down wisdom, knowledge, and cultural pride to younger generations of black women. What followed will be a Pan-Africanist women's perspective. Some of you will be aware that for the past 18 months, I've been interviewing women, women, specifically on the issues affecting women, 51% of our population. Okay? Vitally important. We understand what affects women, our women and girls. And I have to tell you, the research has been extensive. I've spoken to more than 4,200 women and girls to date, and I will continue to speak with them. Okay. There are other research I'm doing which involve men, but I want to focus on the women today. And the research has been quite revealing, and the stats surrounding women's health and well-being, social status, and other related matters. It is quite challenging to digest and to accept. But actually, it is so important that we open ourselves up to reality. But I've got no axe to grind. I just want to understand the issues, to discuss them, and together we'll find solution. I say, understand the issues, to research and discuss them, and so together we can find solutions. Together we are strong, both men and women. Together we are strong. But there are many issues affecting women, and I wanted to understand how some of these attitudes and so on are formed. Mhm. So a recurring discussion that came up in my research is this idea of the Sista Code, or sisterhood, if you like, okay? Which, if those of you were able to watch the intro video, and at the end I'll play it again, it described the Sista Code, as it were. Okay? And it is fascinating how it impacts women's attitude, their vision, their views of themselves, men, and society. So the aspect of the Sista Code or sisterhood, which embeds a whole series of positive statements to encourage women to work together, again, in common aim and common purpose. Okay? And I completely understand. Brotherhoods is very similar. Mhm. But today, I want to give light to the women. Mhm. So, what I'm going to share for this particular show is not live appearances of women. I want you to hear the voices of women as I recorded these interviews. Okay, some were quite wide-ranging, others were short because that's because of how the responses were being received. Some were quite out there, and I'll play a few of those in the coming months, let me tell you. And some were kind of center stage because they illuminate what, in general, women were saying. Okay. So I'm going to focus particularly on those women whose views, their attitudes were center stage. In other words, they're common to the majority of women. Some of the information you'll see today or hear today may surprise you, others will not be so surprising, but it will provide an insight into the thinking of our women who we love dearly and seek their best health and well-being. Okay. Some aspect of the interview touches on health, of course, as you would expect, but also about marriage, while the intro is about marriage, okay, and society generally. Okay. And the views are quite wide-ranging. And I say again, at times a little difficult to accept because you wonder, oh my gosh, really? This is how women think about these matters? But unless we are exposed to the true fruits of women and girls, we will not understand each other. If we don't understand each other, then that is a recipe for disaster. I say again, that is a recipe for disaster. So the context for each of these interviews is really to understand the attitude to key issues, okay? And the key issues really stem from health, as I mentioned, okay? Relationships amongst other women, and of course with men, uh, children, okay? Uh, and also consider marriage, as you would expect, and of course the reduced numbers of babies that are coming into our communities. Indeed, all communities, but we want to understand what's happening in our community. Okay. Okay. So here we go. I want you to listen carefully. Okay. It's a conversation. Okay. Whilst there's a whole series of questions. Okay. I try to make it as conversational as you know my style is. Okay. I try to make it as conversational, but I want you to listen keenly. Please don't judge. This is women sharing their thoughts, sharing their views honestly, and this is a safe environment. And for that reason, you can only hear their voices, you cannot see them. Okay? I want to protect their anonymity for now. If they wish to come forward, and we may do a podcast with them live, that's fair enough. But for now, I didn't have their permission for that, but I have their permission to at least share this audio recording of the interviews. Okay. And as I said before, it is really insightful. Okay. Do not judge. I say again, do not judge. I'm now going to put on the screen a little dialogue. There's a woman, she's tapping her drum. She is communicating to you right now. You can see on the screen, she's communicating. Yeah. She's been thoughtful, pensive. She's communicating. She's moving her fingers, making taps. She's smiling. She wants you to know it's all right to listen. Okay. It's all right to listen. Here you go. Ready? Listen keenly. The first voice you'll hear is a woman whose interview was center. Much of what she said, overwhelming majority of women I've spoken to have said much the same, are using same words or similar words. So this is why this particular audio recording is being played to you. Listen keenly. We all will learn. Here we go. All said, all said. Can I just now take you on? What about the efforts to ensure equality of opportunity for women in all spheres of public life? Or is the idea that women are disadvantaged a myth?
Are we talking about black women in particular?
Yes, black women in particular, yes.
I think when you're in the white supremacy system, it will always be at a disadvantage.
Mhm. Okay. Now, no, that's okay. No, that's a very. Let me stop there straight away. You heard what she said. If we were in a white supremacist environment, where one ethnic group see themselves as being better than others. Okay. Women, black women, yeah, women of African heritage are always disadvantaged. That was direct. She said it without hesitation. It is a common response to that question. Listen further. Listen further. Direct response. I've had that response on a few
I mean,
occasions.
we can dress it up however we want to, but it will always come down to we'll always be at a disadvantage.
Okay.
Simple.
All right. Okay. That's all right. And thank you for that direct response. 'Cause it doesn't require further elaboration. Okay. That doesn't
Yeah.
require. Right. Can we just take one then? Would you see yourself as an independent woman or feminist, or would you see yourself as a woman who embodies some traditional roles for women and therefore traditional values for women? Hmm.
I'm a woman that doesn't give myself labels. I follow a spiritual path. I'm My focus is strengthening my connection to God and the message or what I'm ordained to do. So I don't go around calling myself a feminist, or I don't fit into any sort of clique or um area. I'm just who I am.
Okay. Okay.
I'm more concerned about my connection with God and what the message is and what life is about and why we're all here.
All
I
right.
think it's a distraction well, for me it is anyway, if I label myself. I'm a woman. We have,
Is,
we're multifaceted.
are there
Yeah.
traditional roles for women in relationship with men? Is there traditional roles, or do you see yourself as being independent and therefore self-sufficient, and therefore would consider yourself to be a feminist, someone who's really promoting empowerment for women, particularly in relationship with men?
I think we have innate roles as women. I think we're nurturers
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
as women. And I think we will naturally fall into our feminine role when the masculine is in his masculine role. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? And when the
Right?
two are connected, I think
Yeah.
naturally we will do what we have to do in our natural innate roles.
And you don't see that as being a weakness. You see it as being natural, as you say, innate roles.
Yes.
Okay. I pause there. You heard that. Again, this was a common response for a majority of women of African heritage. Yeah. Not associating themselves with so-called feminist dogma that we're exposed to, but there were clearly few, but not associated. Yeah. Seeing themselves as just women, okay, and there's innate roles for women in relationships. Okay? The most vulnerable time for a woman is when she's pregnant with a child or has a young child and she's suckling that young child. Okay? Yeah. There's innate roles, and understanding that role is essential. Okay? And to be joyous in that role. It's not weakness, it's strength. Powerful, powerful. I was powerful. But the majority of women I spoke to responded in this manner, contrary to any propaganda you might have been exposed to prior. I mean, that word is going to come up again. Listen keenly. All right. Thank you. Thank you. That's very clear, very clear. And it is interesting as you hear your elaboration on that particular question. I need to
Mm.
ask you this concept I hear often from women. They refer to as being the Sista Code or the what's that? The women's support mechanism. Okay? What does that mean to you, first of all, the Sista Code, or whatever descriptor you wish to give to it? What does it mean to you?
I'm not familiar with the Sister Code. I'm familiar with Sisterhood.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
and for me, that is the Black women really connecting with each other and building on each other's strengths
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
lay the foundation for the community,
Hmm.
to And that foundation, when it's laid, it is almost the benchmark for future generations because we
Hmm.
are the nurturers, we are the ones who are giving birth to the babies and
Hmm.
raising them
Hmm. Hmm.
in a nurturing way. So I think I've always found that when black women come together, a lot of magic happens, especially when they're on the same
Okay.
or they have the same similar mindset. So the
Yes.
sisterhood is definitely important for our community.
We pause there. You heard that. When black women come together, it's magic. You're all supporting each other. It is magic, she said. And I'm assuring you, when she said it, she had a smile on her face, yeah, in recognition that she's not alone. In unity is strength. Powerful, powerful, powerful. Let's watch this. So, descriptions I receive from 100 women is that sister code, sisterhood, support and uplift each other, encouraging one another's growth, success, and emotional well-being. Another
Yes.
term used often is loyalty and trust, maintaining trust, being loyal, and not betraying a fellow sister, especially in matters of relationships, personal struggles, or public criticism. In other words, you always support each other. Being no judging, creating safe spaces where women can be vulnerable without fear of harsh judgment by other women. Okay. Another scripture which me is standing up for each other, speaking up against injustice or mistreatment directed at other black women.
Mm,
And last to the scriptures often I've received response is celebrating black womanhood, honoring the unique beauty, strengths, and cultural identity of African women or black women worldwide. That's again a common theme, and of course, the obvious one is mentorship and legacy, passing down wisdom, knowledge, and cultural pride to the
mm,
younger generation of African or Black women. Those are the
mm.
common themes I'm getting. Those are the responses I'm seeing. Do they resonate with you in terms of your understanding of the sisterhood?
Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I also believe before we can get to that point, we have to do a lot of inner work and
All
be able
right.
to hold ourselves accountable.
Ooh, okay.
So
Okay.
I,
And that's why I'm playing this particular audio, because she expanded personal accountability. Yeah. A remarkable human being is this particular woman, a remarkable human being, I can assure you. She went right to the source. We must hold ourselves accountable, she said, as women. Indeed, as we, as men, must hold ourselves accountable. But she said it was a conviction. You know, I'm assuring you, if you had been there and experienced it firsthand, you would have understood straight away we must take responsibility for the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And in taking that responsibility, we empower ourselves to effect change. Listen to what she goes on to say. Listen to this.
I feel like everything is definitely um, the trajectory we should be heading towards. But I feel like sometimes we jump ship and it all sounds nice, but are we doing the work behind the scenes? It's easy to say, yes, we should do this and we should, love each other and pray for each
Mhm,
other. But on the
mhm,
ground, is that what
mhm,
we are actually doing?
mhm. Okay, let me
So,
test that. Let me test what you're saying.
yeah,
Is the sisterhood responsible for the decline of marriage within the UK Black or African community? Would you say, bear in mind what you did describe, are we supporting each other, particularly with the relationships are hard, huh? They're hard, yeah? And
mm,
we all need others around us who can give us support so we can go through the trials and tribulations of relationship. Is the sisterhood able to support you through your relationship, or is there a tendency of the sisterhood to magnify the negative? Give some your feedback. What's your view?
um, I think where it stands now, in my experience with Black women and marriage,
Mhm.
Not a lot of black women I know are married.
And a pause there. And that is a fact and profound. It is a fact and it is profound because of the short, medium, and long term impact that fact is having on our communities. Mhm. It is profound. But listen on, because she goes on to make other profound observations. Indeed.
So,
The stats say
yeah.
around 24% of black women of African heritage, will actually get married in Britain. Can you imagine? The next closest ethnic
Mm,
group are white women, in our case, uh, English, Scotch, English, Scotch, Welsh, and Northern Irish. It's a plus 50%. In other
mm,
words, the next ethnic group are more than twice likely to get married as compared to ourselves. In other words, only 1 in 4 of our women will ever get married. A pause there. Terrifying stats. In some parts of the country, it's even lower. Even lower. Those are terrifying stats. No civilization can survive unless men and women bond and work together. I say again, no civilization, no community can survive unless men and women bond and work together for life. For life. Hmm? For life. Listen on, listen on.
mm,
But the most distressing part of the research I've found is that
mm,
up to 8% of those women will file for divorce.
mm,
Terrifying statistic. Absolutely terrifying statistic. Okay. That is a series, a podcast series, which is coming. Why are our marriages breaking down? What are the factors? How can we address those factors? It is coming. Terrifying statistic. A terrifying statistic. And when I say statistic, just to make it ensure it's clear, in other words, it's simply counting the numbers. Yeah, it's simply counting the numbers. 180 of those will end in divorce. Terrifying statistic. I'll say no more for now. I'll say no more. Listen on. Now, question here is that the sisterhood that is magnifying the negative experience of marriage or indeed long-term relationship. What's your experience?
we're dealing with these are recent stats.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
I think social media is playing a huge part in
That's a common response I'm getting. Yeah, tell us more about social media. Why is it? Before we go into social media, because I must say that I that was a piece of learning for me. Social media's impact on women, indeed young people's attitudes and behavior. Attitude and behavior. Social media that we have no control over, to which far too many youngsters are totally exposed to and vulnerable to any piece of propaganda that is purted out through these social media platforms. Mom, dad, guardians, yeah? Uncles, aunties, be alert, be alert. But women and men, be alert also. The effects of social media, the propaganda that can be perpetuated through social media, that can have a direct impact on yourself. And she goes on to say why she finds this a pernicious uh, pernicious platforms, which are clearly having negative impact on our communities. Listen keenly. So influential on our community in particular, and not on these other communities. And I could have mentioned the what we call here the Asian community, particularly from, in our case, the South Asian communities India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and so on, who have a 60+% marriage rate, okay, and a very low divorce rate, okay, or the Far East Asian communities, okay, Chinese, Japanese, and so on, okay, where we're now in the plus 70, 80%. Can you imagine? Now, these are astonishing comparisons. Level of divorce amongst those communities is significantly lower than us, but they're exposed to the same social media platforms. Why are we particularly vulnerable, do you think?
because we're individualistic. They're
Aha.
collectivist. Yeah,
Let me pause there again. Her response, and this response is said in different ways by uh, hundreds of women that I've spoken to, that we are individualistic. Yep. It's a fundamental flaw, particularly in the diasporic African communities, being individualistic. Okay, particularly you don't know the people you come from. Individualistic, the roots. Yeah, so you just for yourselves. Yeah? There's a common African proverb about a tree with deep roots. The proverb says, "When the roots are deep, there's no reason to fear the wind." This proverb emphasizes the importance of a strong foundation and resilience in the face of adversity. The proverb uses the metaphor of a tree and its roots to illustrate how a strong foundation, whether it's in personal life, community, or any other endeavor, provides the strength and stability needed to withstand the challenges and difficulties. A strong foundation like deep roots ensures survival and continued growth, even when faced with a storm or other obstacles. It is a deep social problem. It is a deep social problem. But raising awareness, shining a light on it, provides an opportunity for us to put our genius to work towards solutions. I see she's drumming. She's communicating with us. I can feel her drumming. I can hear the communication. She's on the screen. You see it? Yeah. Anyway, listen keenly.
collectivist communities. So
Mm-hmm.
they build together. They spend their wealth with each other.
Uh-huh.
The families marry their children.
Uh-huh.
So they're very
Yes.
tight knit. We're not,
Yeah.
and we are susceptible to infiltration because we're so yes, come in, yes,
Yes.
it's free for all. But I do
Mhm.
feel like with social media, there's a lot of propaganda. I
Indeed.
think there's an agenda to attack the black family, the pillars of the community, the black man and black woman. It's
Mm-hmm.
constant. It's sometimes I do feel there's agenda. They'll, if you look at certain posts,
Mm-hmm.
black women, black men are just going at it. And sometimes I don't believe behind these images of black women or black men.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe they're black. There are black men or black women. I think they're bots or there's, like I said, there's an agenda. And I think, when you hear something enough,
Mm-hmm.
propaganda, you
Yes.
start to
Believe.
internalize it and you start
Yes,
to
right.
believe it.
That's
So
right. You pause there. And I've also been thinking this as well. You you see on social media channels, it's usually just us, African people of African heritage, berating other peoples of African heritage, whether on account of their gender, social class, or whatever. It's usually us doing it. She's questioned that. What she's saying is, and I've said it as well, is this real? Is this real? Are these real people? Or is this computer generated? Is this the pernicious negative propaganda being propagated by those who do not have our interest at heart? Because it's not consistent, I say again, not consistent with our families, our networks, or wider communities, because we don't see that in real life. We only see this behavior on these social media platforms. So she, as a mother, as a woman, as a nurturer, yeah, as a life giver, She's questioned their authenticity. But she's also recognizing that if you're exposed to a lie regularly enough, you slowly internalize and believe the lie. Mums, dad, guardians, aunties, uncles, yes? Grandmothers, grandfathers. Social media is dangerous. Don't let our children, your relatives, be totally exposed to social media without your filter. Let's listen on to what she says. Because this is a mother who cares, who loves her children, loves children dearly. She wants to protect. She wants to nurture them to be the best people. They can realize their own personal potential. And she could see active players out there who are propagating images, ideas, which are the very antithesis, the opposite to wholesome family units. Listen on.
I feel that's what's happening. If you hear, oh, black women aggressive, black women aggressive, black women aggressive, if you start seeing,
Mm-hmm.
interracial relations, marry out of your
Mm-hmm.
race, blah, blah, blah. And if you start, hearing that,
Mm-hmm.
black women don't like black men don't like, you
Mm-hmm.
start to internalize it.
Yes, propaganda, propaganda.
It's
Well said.
propaganda.
Well said you. Well said you. Well said
Because
you. Yeah.
I see, I think men are very simple creatures. They're aesthetic, they like aesthetics.
Yes.
If you look good,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be attracted to you. I don't think it's the propaganda that's been spewed out, but again, I think social media has played a huge part
Okay.
in the
Thank
breakdown.
you. I'll pause it there, and to the person in the chat right now who suggests that we do not love each other, love ourselves enough. We do love ourselves enough. I say again, we do love ourselves enough. We just need to exhibit that love, show it now. It's propaganda, that negative propaganda, the bots are propagating idea that we don't love ourselves, each other enough. This is what this mother, yeah, this is what this wife, this is what this woman, this great woman says. Because she's saying that it's inconsistent with her actual life experience. What is being propagated on social media is not what she experiences. And she's questioning its authenticity. And in doing so, she will move the world. Question it. Don't accept it. And to counter it, exhibit and show the love for each other. Can be challenging at times, don't misunderstand. Indeed, love is action. That's why we're doing this podcast. Love is action. Praise Jah, Rastafari. Here we go. That's a very clear
Yeah.
response, and believe it or not, your response is in line with more than 2/3 of my respondents. Social media is
Okay.
a big factor
Yeah.
impacting negatively on our
Very.
community. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is another flag, and again, my listeners and viewers are being made aware. Thank you for what is a very clear response. Okay.
Mhm.
Now let's move on to another aspect. Again, I'm using Sista Code, sisterhood.
Sure.
Is it having a negative impact on the number of babies that are born in our communities? Okay. What's your
The
view?
number of babies.
Yes, there's a clear decline, although there is a decline across the piece anyway, but nevertheless, in our community, there's a decline. It's been attributed initially to economic factors, which we mentioned childcare being a good example. But in our
Mm.
community, it is notable, notable. And I say our community here in the UK versus
Mm.
our communities in Africa, in the continent of Africa, where there's a growth of each size of families. Here, there's a significant decline in the Caribbean and the US. There's a decline in the number of babies being born into our communities. Okay. And there's postulations that it's a result of a narrative permeating the community,
Mm.
and it's attributed to the sisterhood, okay, being it's been a factor. What's your experience? Why do you think there's a number of babies that are declining? Is it to do with the sisterhood or not? And what would you, if not, what would you attribute it to?
I'm not sure I understand why it's been attributed to the sisterhoods. Two women
Mhm,
can't make a baby.
mhm.
Um, so
But they can affect the attitude of women to babies and relationships,
really, because my experience with
right?
um, uh, women that I know or women that they know is that
Hmm.
a lot of women are seeking relationships to start
Hmm.
families are
Hmm.
and are in fear of not of getting to a certain age where it may be too late for them.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not sure where that narrative is coming from in terms of it's the sisterhood that's attributing to the decline in babies being born. So it
Right.
doesn't marry up with my experience in terms of I know women who want more babies, who've had babies but want more babies, or who don't have babies and want babies. So
Okay. What about the
yeah.
relationship with men, of course? Okay, because it does appear, and this is an interesting stat, that
Mm.
for every 100 men, particularly young men I've spoken to, um, we have up in the 80s and 90% who were forced to be fathers. They didn't.
Forced
They
to be
were
fathers.
having fun, having fun.
Yeah.
Um, that fun led to an unwanted pregnancy, and the general response I'm getting is that they were told there was adequate contraceptive in place, and therefore they didn't require additional contraceptive for themselves. And they've therefore been compelled to be fathers. And this is a source of the disgruntlement, particularly among young men, and fearful of young women who might tie them in for the whole of their lives with a child that they really didn't want, particularly with that particular person at that time in their life.
Mm.
Is there a
So
narrative amongst this sisterhood that talked about these matters, um, and is it promoting healthy relationships, or is it encouraging women to have babies without thought of a relationship with dad?
so you're saying that men are saying that they've been forced into fatherhood because when discussed with the woman has uh, said that they're on contraceptive
Mhm.
and it was a lie or it was a trick.
It,
They're not. They're not.
well, there's certainly there have been economical with the truth, and
Okay.
there's a separate podcast for preparing, speaking to women with children by themselves, okay, and who are
Okay.
not in a relationship, to have that honest discussion with them about the cooperation with dad at the outset. And all the indications are from the initial research. I've only had just under 300 at the moment. Overwhelming majority have said that Dad didn't want it, but I wanted it, and therefore I went ahead. Yeah.
Okay. What age group are we talking about?
Age group between that's a good question, between 18 to 31. I'm pausing there for a moment because it's this is a biggie. This is a biggie, and I had not expected uh, that observation come out of this research. Okay. The numbers of women who not fully grasp the importance of dads wanting to be fathers. Mm, okay. And it is an interesting one. But of course, we're in a new age now in which women autonomy needs to be respected and should be respected. Okay. But I say to young men right now, uh, if you don't want a baby, You need to take your own steps. Do not be naive. I say again, if you don't want a baby, you need to take your own steps to avoid a baby being the result of you having fun. But I'm interested, very interested to hear from young women. As I said, it's coming in a few months' time, but I have enough data from which to do some analysis and extrapolation from. Okay, but at the moment, the majority appear to be situations in which mum has decided to go ahead regardless of the views of dad. Yes, they're not baby father or anything like that. Dads, regardless, regardless of the social implications that present for them and society. Listen on, listen on.
Okay, I couldn't really speak on that age group
Okay, fair
because
enough.
we're talking about millennials now, so they're different.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
sure how relationships I know is different now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this that generation have been born into the internet and internet dating, and
Mm-hmm.
so
That's right.
it's it's a swipe culture. It's I've got more options than I believe than you actually have, and so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it inflates egos and yeah, a lot of narcissistic behavior. But
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a lot of relationship issues in that age group, but I
Yes.
can't really
Yes.
speak on that because I'm not in that age group.
It's okay. And do you have a comment? Because this come up as a supplemental question. Women dressing provocatively, supposedly for other women, but actually to attract male attention, as we are visual creatures, and they're so provocative, and they give up their intimates
Mm,
so readily that it then devalues a long-term relationship because they've given up their greatest treasures. Okay,
mm.
is that a discussion amongst the sisterhood that women are concerned about? That in fact the relationships are declining because standards or expectations are too low?
I think it's a chicken and the egg
Okay,
question
all
again.
right.
But if you have women or girls who are being brought up in single parent homes,
Mhm.
predominantly mothers, and there isn't a
Yes,
father figure there that's
indeed.
going to be that dominant figure, that
Yes,
male role model, so they know
yes,
what to aspire to when they're looking for a
yes,
mate.
yes.
Right? Um, for example, with my dad, who's not in this country, a gentleman wanted to, this was when I was younger, he wanted to take me on a date. My
All
dad
right.
sent a chaperone. He had to ask my dad for a date with me, and my dad sent a chaperone with us.
Oh,
So, I mean, it sounds archaic, but
it was the right thing
that's
to do.
this
Yes,
is
yes,
what, so
absolutely.
one when I'm older, because of this is my experience. My dad
Yes,
is
yes,
quite the patriarch of the family. You
absolutely.
couldn't come to me on the street and ask me for my digits. It's just not going to
Hmm.
happen because my role model won't even
Yes.
allow me to go out on a date
Yeah.
without the man asking him for
Hmm.
permission.
Absolutely.
So we
Absolutely.
can go round and round in circles with this.
Hmm.
Why is she just promiscuous?
Hmm.
Who's raising her? What's
Yes.
going on in her household? So I
Yes.
couldn't just talk on
That's
women.
fair enough. That's fair enough. Fair enough. But do you
Right.
have an
So
opinion
yeah,
though?
it's
Do you have an opinion in that case then on the
what
clearly
about women
it,
dressing
well,
promiscuously?
but if I return to women who are not in relationship but have children, okay,
Mm,
and the impact that has on the children, okay. Clearly, again, overwhelming majority of men in prison come from single mother household. Majority of boys who are underperforming at schools, okay,
mm,
and are suffering from psychological challenges come from single female. Also, those less able to control their emotions come from single women households.
mm,
And the stats just continue escalating. Those
mm,
stats are pretty well known. within your sisterhood, as it were, okay,
Mm.
do you not discuss these matters and therefore consider how you could support young women to make good decisions for themselves and indeed our children, as it were?
We could, but I feel like there is no real sisterhood. We're very fragmented.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's we probably, like I said, I think the generations are also divided as well.
Hmm.
Whereas we should be all together,
Hmm.
um, and passing on information
Hmm.
and knowledge and experience.
Hmm.
But it's we talk about this sisterhood, but there isn't really a sisterhood. It's quite fragmented.
Okay, okay.
So again, it's chicken and egg story. But
I
I
understand.
mean, if you're a
Hmm.
mother and you have children,
Hmm.
you should
Hmm.
have the respect for yourself and your children to dress in a
Yes,
decent manner.
yes.
Um, and I don't I'm not. There shouldn't be any excuse for that. Whether you were brought up with a single parent or two, you should know after you have children, because
Hmm.
once you're an adult, you can make choices. We have the World Wide Web. If you
Hmm.
need to work on yourself, buy a
Hmm.
book, self-help book. I mean, it's all out there. So we have
Hmm.
choices. So yeah, I would be against. But again, if there's no sisterhood, she may not know any difference. She may not
Okay,
have positive role models around her,
okay.
or friends around
Hmm.
her to educate her or speak to her or advise her, especially if
Right.
she's attracting more of
Mhm.
who she is at that stage in her life.
Yes, in other words, dressing provocatively, most of her body's showing, it's attracting
Mm,
the wrong type of attention from men, and you're seen
yes,
very much as being an object, as it were, you know.
right.
Uh, it is interesting to observe, I must say. But you speak about the sisterhood, sister code. Um, can it contribute to providing, securing an economically strong and the emotionally harmonious community? Or does it need to work alongside the male equivalent of the sister code or sisterhood in order to be successful?
It needs to um, both and all of that, and yeah, both. So the sisterhood needs to be strong within itself
Mhm.
before it can work alongside the the brotherhood. They need
Mhm.
to be strong within themselves, and when you
Mhm.
marry them together, then you've got a strong community.
Absolutely. Well said. You don't need to say any more. Well said. I've just, no, no. Oh, very well said. You're right. We need to work. We need to work together. Absolutely. We need to work together. Okay. The stats are pretty stark. Again, the stats are simply counting what is fact. What is fact? That's what it is. Counting what is fact. Yeah. They're pretty stark. But raising our collective consciousness about the facts enables us to be better informed, therefore, okay, acknowledging the information, and we can begin the process of pooling our mental resources together to address these issues, to tackle them head on. I say to young men, you take that extra precaution if you do not want a child. Okay? Take that extra precaution. Do not be naive. Okay. But I say to the women, mature women, and look, she's still drumming, she's looking at us, she's communicating with us right now. Okay. You women absolutely need to take the lead on this one. Because it is women in largely who are in impoverished situations. A household led by one parent, particularly a woman, okay, is usually a household in poverty. That's the problem. And it's that poverty, yeah, that leads to, of course, to deprivation. material deprivation, psychological deprivation, spiritual deprivation. It is not good for any community to be dominated by a household where it is simply a single gender. It is us working together that will make the difference. And that particular person, her views will reflect across hundreds of thousands of respondents to my questions, okay? Which is why I played hers almost in full. Not quite, there was a certain part of it, but almost in full. I think I missed out maybe another 20, 25 minutes, but we played a large part of her contribution because she was clear, she was direct, she was honest. Okay, okay. There are a few who were not so clear, who were quite, direct with their responses. It is well. But nevertheless, there are many red flags as a result of that particular dialogue, many red flags. I want to share with you just for a few more minutes another woman which reflects the majority of women's attitude and views on this subject. And again, you'll find some of it, naturally concerning, because as it's apparently the views of the majority of women, and that's what I'm playing for today, okay, it provides an insight, an actual insight to the attitudes, the views of women of African heritage, Black women here in Britain. Okay, I will continue to research for the next 2 to 3 years, I believe. I'll invite women to join with me. And if you'd like to be a part of my research, I'd like to interview on a whole range of subjects, okay, I welcome your support. I'm going to put on the screen an email address. There we go. The Motivator Show email address. There you go. You've got it. You've got it there. And my email address. It's the Motivator Show 501 at gmail.com. If you wish to participate in my ongoing research into the views, the attitudes of African heritage women, Black women, and indeed mixed heritage women here in Britain and Europe. Okay. If you wish to participate, please contact me, contact the show via this email address, the Motivator Show 501 at gmail.com. Okay. I welcome you to do so. And again, we mustn't stop learning. There's so much I've learned from this experience. I've learned a great deal. And there was some surprising attitude, which I hadn't anticipated, but I'm so pleased that this research I will continue to do. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. I'll put the email address in the chat on YouTube and of course on Facebook where this is going out live. Okay. But the revised information will be available in 24, 48 hours in the re-edited version of this podcast, which will focus on this part of the podcast. Okay. But I'd like to play you another young lady's views and said it. I'm doing this because one you just heard, while she was very good, there were some questions which were not completely answered, earlier questions. So this young lady provides, fills in some of the gaps. There are others. Anyway, you'll see as we do
That's
this.
okay. Right, I'm ready now. Good,
You
good,
will
good.
understand what I mean by that. There are specific aspects of this podcast by this young lady which was truly inspirational and, well, revealing, if I may say so, actually quite revealing. Because unless, you create safe spaces in which people can express themselves, there's a tendency for us all, me included, I'm sure yourself, for us to hide our true views. I want you to listen to what this young lady says in response to my questions. Listen keenly.
The rainbow.
Hmm. Okay. So, would you agree with the notion that we should always believe women's account of any event or activity?
No, you should not believe anyone's account of anything.
What should you do in that case?
There needs to be authentication.
Hmm.
You need to see what is going on. You cannot just agree with one side of the story.
Hmm. Hmm.
There needs to be evidence.
Yes, yes.
You need to hear the other party.
So, are you suggesting in that case, this notion that we should believe all women is misguided? Is that what you're suggesting?
Of course, you
Okay.
do not believe all women.
Hmm.
Everybody lies at some stage or another because
Hmm.
they do not want to share the truth.
Yeah. Okay.
I cannot think of anyone that could come forth to say that I have never lied. That's a lie from the pit of hell.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's very. I'm going to
Without
move
a
on now.
shadow of a doubt.
I'm going to move on now. Oh, okay. Right. Then,
Everyone has lied in some way,
of
shape,
course.
or form,
Yes. Yes. All right
without
then.
a shadow of a doubt.
All right. Let me ask another question. In that case, is the Sister Code then responsible for the decline of marriage within the UK Black or African communities?
Well,
Could
I'm not too
I-
sure about.
and to be clear, the reason for that question is that 80% of marriages, it is the woman that files for divorce. Yeah.
I think
That,
one of the things that you find
mhm,
is that, yes, someone will get married, they're happy and everything is great. Yes,
mhm,
after the marriage, you find, especially in black cultures, you
mhm,
find that what they want to have children to
mhm.
show that they're fertile and their lineage continues.
Yeah. Mhm.
Not a problem. But what you find is after that happens, they sort of stagnate. They go on holiday. A lot of the women,
Oh,
yes?
right. The
And
girls trips. Yes. Now, you notice how I misinterpreted what this woman was describing. They go on holiday. I just assumed she meant, well, no, they're going on girls' trip. That's what you mean, obviously. She now clarifies. She now corrects. I'm being corrected by her. Listen keenly. Listen keenly. Yes.
they go on holiday. What I mean by that is a
Mhm.
sense that they let themselves go.
Okay.
Their
Yes.
focus is just the children. They forget about the man who has
Mm-hmm.
given them the
The
children.
children. Yes.
They focus on the children.
Mm-hmm.
They stop being attentive to the man,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that starts the decay in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always the case, please
Yes.
understand,
Yes.
but the majority of the cases are that
Okay.
because their main thing is they want to show to others, be it their community, their whatever their country, etc., their
Mm-hmm.
families, etc., that
Mm-hmm.
yes, they have a
Mm-hmm.
lineage, they have children,
Okay.
but they forget about the male aspect in this.
Yes, you've been very honest and open with us. It's interesting. If I may just probe a little further on that one, could you what you're what you're really highlighting is an aspect which I hadn't considered, and I've spoken to quite a number of women. Um, if just to pursue just a little further on this in this regard, but I specifically related this question to the decline of marriage within the UK Black community. Okay, and I think you're saying is that often the marriages are failing because women are focused on the children and and they're not paying the males as much attention, and therefore there may be a reduction in because this is a morning show. I can't use that word, but of intimate relations that may be a consequence. And
Without a shadow of a doubt.
yes, okay. Uh,
Without a shadow of doubt. We've forgotten those
mm,
things. We
okay.
focus on the children and we neglect the man.
Okay. So
Yes?
this is where the sisterhood then comes in. So should the sisterhood be reinforcing and supporting marriage, or is it a tendency for the sisterhood to magnify feelings of negativity?
doubts about the marriage.
I'm honestly not sure of this sisterhood thing that you are
Okay.
referring to. I'm not
Okay.
party to that.
Okay.
What I expect or what I would do is I'm sure that my man is fully taken care of in every way, shape, and form.
Praise be.
You
Yes.
see? And that is important because at the end of the day, yes, you'll have children. Those children will grow up and leave the home. Then what are you left with? You're left with a man there. If
Yes.
that man feels neglected, even as the children are growing up, because your focus is just with them, the marriage disintegrates.
Okay.
Yes,
So my
because
original
you're not
question.
meeting the needs
Yes.
that is required.
So my original question, of course, is there a link between what you're saying? A link between the sister code. This is where you speak to your female friends and they don't offer support for the marriage. They magnify the negative feelings that you might have. And it's that which is referred to as being the sister code, where you're believing your sisters rather than believing the husband that you're with. Would that be a right analogy from what you're saying?
Well, you need to be careful with regards to this so-called sister code. Who
Okay.
is your sisters?
Hmm.
You know, because
Explain.
even
Yes.
even
Hmm.
because even as you
Hmm.
have been born from the same mother and father, you have difficulties, and it's
Yes.
not everything you believe. Let
Hmm.
alone joining yourself
Hmm.
with external people that are not your blood
Hmm.
line
Hmm.
to become this so-called sister code. You
Yes.
have a lot of miserable
Hmm.
and deprived women around,
Yes.
and they want to what force that on you. And
Hmm.
many times we agree just for the sake of agreeing,
Hmm.
but we do not believe it.
Hmm.
And we need to look very carefully at those so-called sisterhood, those women who are
Hmm.
speaking into our lives, who are supposedly giving us advice,
Yes.
or we are talking to. It's
Hmm.
not every advice you take.
That's right.
It's
Yes.
not every person you speak to. There's
Yes.
some you hire and you buy. There's
Hmm.
others you spend 10 minutes speaking to. There's others that you could share a meal with.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you need to sit down and see who is coming into my life. Are they
Yes.
being a blessing or a
Yes.
curse?
Yes.
Do they want me to be like them
Hmm. Okay.
or progress?
Okay. You make
Because
really excellent points.
many
Yes.
time,
Hmm.
as you're in your happy zone
Hmm.
with your husband, with your children, there's many of your so-called friends that do not like it.
Hmm. Right.
And they come and they bring doubt to you.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And that starts to cause a problem within your relationship.
Yes. Okay.
I'll pause there. And this particular woman made some really powerful contributions. Okay. We are going to do this again. The materials I've gathered, I've got hundreds, indeed thousands of hours of material here of women expressing views directly. Okay. Views generally have not been expressed in public. Okay. But I've been able to gather this information and to share with you. And what you just heard was again another common retort I'm receiving, a suspicion sometimes amongst women that those, particularly those who are not in relationship, can advise to those in relationship, but then facilitate that relationship declining rapidly. Okay. This is powerful testimony. And women very rarely speak publicly on these matters, the advice they receive from other women. You know? Not usually married women, it's usually single women. Mhm. Maybe a little controversial, but I can tell you, using similar words, more than 48% of women made similar statements, very similar statements. Powerful stuff. I'm not seeing it out there in social media. I'm not seeing out there in our general discourse, listening to the voices of women, what women really think, what women really feel, and indeed better understand what women really want. You know me. We need to understand. We need to understand. So this is a start of a series that will become a podcast where we're listening to the views of women. Okay, vitally important. We'll do this once every 4 to 5 episodes. Okay, and I'll share with you the rich treasure trove of information I've gathered, which is raw information. Well, women will speak for themselves. It's not me filtering through my voice. You hear the women themselves speaking. And if you wish to be a part of this research I'm engaging, so we men can better understand you, and indeed women generally can better communicate, I urge you, please reach out to us, okay? But I'll put the email address on the screen again. The Motivator Show, 501 at gmail.com. The Motivator Show, 501 at gmail.com. She's still tapping her drum. She's smiling. She's thinking. She's being pensive. She's communicating. She wants us to understand the giver of life. Oh, yeah. It has been for me a powerful experience, an eye opener. Currently, we're only touching the surface of what is being revealed, what is actually being revealed. It is a treasure trove. I now better understand some of the nuances of women now. I didn't understand. Look at my grand age. I didn't understand. I now better understand. Okay. We must hold women up in the highest esteem. They're a critical part of who we are as human beings. Humanity could not survive without women. And conversely, humanity could not survive without men. And so it's important for us to listen to each other, to listen. So there's much more to share, much more to share. But thank you. I hope you found what has been revealed thus far useful, insightful, and will be a source for your future discussions. Because this is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. Okay, I'll let her go now. Here she goes. Oh, she's gone now. Here you go. All righty. I hope you found that very helpful. Hope you found that very helpful. Gosh. Oh, yeah, I found it very helpful. And indeed, look at that contributor in the chat. Yes, our daughters, indeed, of course, our daughters. But I hope you found information shared so far useful. There's much more to share with you. Okay, and I will relate to you what has been common, and in later podcasts, we'll then look at those on the fringes, those fringe views. But right now, I want to center on the central focus. Most certainly, the issue about men and unwanted pregnancies is a biggie. Yep, unwanted fatherhood is a biggie. Yep, but that's having direct social impact on the community. It is a fundamental one we absolutely address. A fundamental issue of concern. If you're a religious leader, you should be discussing it. Should be whether you're Muslim or Christian. You should be discussing this. Okay, secular organization, you should discuss this issue. We should simply not accept this situation. It's having significant deleterious or negative impact on the community. The Sista Code versus marriage. Core principles of the Sista Code: support and uplift each other, encouraging one another's growth, success, and emotional well-being. Core principles of the Sista Code include loyalty and trust, maintaining trust, being loyal, and not betraying a fellow sister, especially in matters of relationships, personal struggles, or public criticisms. No judging, creating safe spaces where women can be vulnerable without fear of harsh judgment. Standing up for each other, speaking up against injustice or mistreatment directed at another black woman. Celebrating black womanhood, honoring the unique beauty, strengths, and cultural identity of African American women. Mentorship and legacy, passing down wisdom, knowledge, and cultural pride to younger generations of black women. Cultural context. The code has roots in the African American community's history of resilience. During times when black women were excluded from mainstream feminist movements and faced both racial and gender discrimination, they often turned to each other for strength and support. The code emerged from shared experiences in churches, salons, families, neighborhood, and social activism. Examples in practice. Speaking out when a black woman is being disrespected or erased from a narrative. Promoting another sister's business, achievements, or creative works. Being a shoulder to cry on during tough times without gossip or betrayal. Holding each other accountable with love and grace. The Motivator here. Hope you enjoyed that fantastic podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, or at the very least give us a like, and don't forget the next video on screen. Click through and enjoy.